Hi, and welcome to Spark L&D podcast. I'm Ina Olimskaya, and this series is for L&D professionals who want to grow impact and for business leaders, how L&D can drive performance. Each episode shares practical tools and insight that will help you to spark L&D with confidence. But before we start, let me also say hi and welcome to Jennifer.
Hello. Hi, everyone. I'm happy to be here.
And we're happy that you're also here. Jennifer will help us today unpack the topic of this episode. We will talk about the skill that gives L&D professionals flexibility to work across any business areas. And I am talking about functional agility. So the key question that we ask today is, do you need to have experience in the function that you support from L&D side or not? And now let me introduce Jennifer, who built her L&D career by focusing on what really drives impact, understanding how learning works. And Jennifer has been in L&D for more than 15 years across healthcare, finance, and also startup organizations. But what really makes her experience and journey remarkable is that she started in a theater with masters in fine art and managed to bring that creative energy to the corporate learning. And such skills as reading the audience, connecting with the people, storytelling can really elevate any training experience. And besides that, of course, Jennifer worked across different functions, companies, and even industries. That's why she's here. Hi again, Jennifer.
Hello again. Hi.
How do you feel?
I'm excited. I'm excited. This is a fun podcast. So thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, that's pleasure, and thank you for your openness to talk about your experience and the journey and share it with me, but also with our listeners. Shall we start?
Absolutely.
Okay, I prepared some questions, and the first will be about credibility. When you joined different companies and they were from different industries, before jumping into designing any learning process and training programs, you had to get this buy-in from your stakeholders and earn their trust and credibility. What did you do to get that?
Great question. The first thing I always start with, and I think a lot of people in L&D do this, is the first thing I do is I listen. And I start by listening to the stakeholders, right? The leaders, and finding out, first of all, why am I here? What are the gaps? What situations are you needing to remedy, right? So I first start to listen to the stakeholders, the leaders, and then I write all that down. Make sure I read it back to them, make sure I'm fully understanding everything that they're experiencing from their point of view. And then I ask if I can see the frontline leaders, the frontline staff, and I start to immerse myself in the different roles, responsibilities, departments, different levels. And I continue to do that. I continue to listen. I continue to ask curious questions. I hear the good, the bad, the ugly, the awesome, the exciting. I hear everything because you get a huge idea of the organization from the people that are experiencing the organization every single day. So I take copious notes, listen to all of that, and then I go back to the stakeholders. I go back to the leaders. I go back to the CEO, back to the CFO. And I sit down and I'm very transparent. And I let them know, okay, so here's what the frontline staff said. You may know a lot of this. You may know zero of this. You are going to have emotional reactions to this. You're going to have business reactions to this. And so I kind of let them know, I do. I let them know everything that I have heard, experienced, witnessed, observed, the whole bit. And then we get down to the nitty-gritty. Okay. Is it a training problem? Is it a learning and development problem? Is it a culture problem? Is it an HR issue? Is it an IT issue? What issues, or could it be all of the above? And then I start to develop a plan. Now, I've already started having a plan prior, but I start to develop a plan with the leaders and mapping out from an L&D perspective, from a training perspective, how we can solve it. The other elements, when I might say this could be a culture problem, I let them handle that. Of of course, because
Mhm.
that's kind of out of my realm. But I do give them a quick little mini roadmap, a little plan of how L&D can help with that particular issue. But knowing they may want to go a different route with that. So again, it's listening, it's questioning, it's being curious, it's being open, it's being transparent, it's talking to the leaders first, then the frontline staff, and then back to the leaders. And that's just the first step. Because then once you've got the plan, you've got to go execute it, right? So you're going back to the frontline staff and you're speaking with middle management and you're
Mhm.
getting plans and all of that good stuff together. But that's what I do first.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I actually made notes when you spoke, and it looks like a blueprint with concrete steps that you went through, and following that, your own blueprint helped you to build this connection, but also credibility with stakeholders that were new in the organization. And I also like that you mentioned that sometimes you found out that the issues are not training or competency related and linked with different other situations within the organization. And it's important also to put them on the table. Mm.
Always, absolutely, because the business wants to thrive, and so leaders a lot of times want to know, how can we make things better, even if not from an L&D or training perspective.
Okay, so now you have a kind of clear action plan what you do to build your credibility. But let's now travel a bit to the past, like we have a time machine. Uh, 15 years ago, or even maybe more. How did you feel when you stepped into L&D area? And maybe you can share some examples when things didn't go smoothly or how you planned and something didn't work in terms of training or any learning processes.
Right. So let me get that first part of the question. So when I first transitioned over from teaching into
Mhm,
training, you don't know what you don't know. So I went
mhm, mhm,
in with confidence in the sense that I knew how to tell a story and I knew how to read an audience. So I took confidence in that. And I went in and started to do my observations, my listening. I knew I had good observations and listening skills. So that allowed me to be open and to start learning more of the L&D process, right? And I
mhm.
read all kinds of good stuff on adult learning theory and instructional design and all of that great stuff. However, that all did not prepare me for one of the first moments that I experienced being very excited and young, right? Coming into an organization, they had hired me as a contractor to work on some of their behavioral health initiatives with a client that they had. They'd had me for about 4 to 5 weeks. I had done a great job on that. And they said, you know what? We want to hire you full time to take
Mhm,
over
mhm.
another part of the business for us. So I went in and on my high, right, being very excited that I did a good job on one thing. I went in gangbusters, started observing, and I had all these great ideas. And I was like, oh, you need to do this, and you need to change this, and you should definitely try A, B, C, and D. And let's do this tomorrow. And I have a plan for how you're going to accomplish this next week, right? And I was working at night and building out training plans and roadmaps and all of that good stuff. And I was told no. I was told
Oh.
no by the people that I needed the action from
Mhm,
because I made the number one mistake, which I touched on in my first answer, to your first question. I didn't listen. I
mhm.
came in with what I thought were great solutions. And when you look back, they were really good ideas, but I hadn't built that trust with those that I needed to implement the ideas with. And I hadn't seen their point of view and I didn't know the backstory, right? So I had assumed that they were able to decide A, B, C, or D, and they had
Mhm.
chosen incorrectly, right? Because clearly the answer is what I think. I didn't understand, and I didn't have the maturity until later to understand out of the choices they were given in where the business was at the time, they chose
Mhm.
great. They made the best decision, right? Sometimes you have to stop and listen and find out where the business was, where the department was, where the learners were, where the stakeholders were, where everybody was at the time to understand why a decision was made. And then you can come in and say,
Mhm.
got it. That makes so much sense. You did an amazing job. Now let's take a look at where you're at right now because the business is wanting to move forward. And the reason I'm here is because they're seeing a little bit of a gap. Let's talk about how that happened. And then let me get your ideas first because odds are they thought of what I've thought about. They just
Mhm.
didn't know how to implement it, or they felt stuck, or they didn't feel supported. So you almost kind of become a mini therapist in a way, but from a learning and training perspective. And then you create that collaboration. So listening, observing, asking questions, giving praise, being excited about what they've done, which I didn't do. And now I've learned to
Mhm.
do, builds that collaboration. And so again, learning doesn't happen without collaboration. So how can changing of the learning process or what you're needing to learn happen without collaboration? So that's just, I hope that is a good
Good
answer for you.
example. Actually, when you shared your excitement when you stepped into that organization, I recognize myself. I also was so excited when I took one of the roles, and then I wanted also to change so many things and implement so many training programs. Yeah, that now I have different perspective on that. More listening before proposing anything can relate to that. Now let's move to the key question of this episode, and this question that I also ask myself quite often. So, do you need to have experience in the function that you support from L&D side? Yes or no? And let me explain why I ask this question to myself. Because I started in sales and then I moved to learning and development. And having this sales background helped me actually to build trainings for sales teams, for key account managers, sales representatives, because I kind of knew what they experienced and what kind of support they needed. But then the question is, for example, if me or someone like me can tomorrow go and support with L&D marketing team or medical affairs or supply chain. So, what's your perspective on this question?
My perspective is it helpful? Absolutely.
Mhm.
Is it necessary? No. And does it depend on the business, the function? Yes. So I'll kind of take your example. You said sales. So I think in sales, it is somewhat important because you have a reputation to uphold and you have salespeople that are coming in and new salespeople, not as much, but existing salespeople are going to
Mhm.
want to know, have you pounded the pavement like I have? Have you made the calls like I have? Have you been in this situation? And so, from a sales perspective, I do think it's important. Um, but it's not always necessary because I'm going to play devil's advocate here. And when I was working at a call center and we were doing call center sales, I only had to take a few calls, didn't have to be in the role forever to
Mhm.
understand what needed to be done and
Mhm.
how they needed to improve their customer service, their direct sales, their closing the sale, a different, implementing a sales methodology was Snap at the time.
Mhm.
So I didn't necessarily have to have that street cred, as we say here. So I think it depends on the organization.
Mhm.
Um, I have come in and quickly learned everything I need to learn from a business perspective to figure out what the
Mhm.
learning plan needs to be. I didn't have to be a banker in the credit union to understand what the banker needed to know and
Mhm.
then to logically make a learning plan for that banker to be able to upskill. And a lot of times we would have great tellers, right, that wanted to become assistant branch managers. I needed to focus on their leadership skills and some additional finance skills, but I didn't need to have been in the finance industry forever to be able to create the learning path that they needed.
Mhm. So
So,
It means that that's not necessary, but if you have such experience, it helps you to get this credibility and build trust faster, for example.
It does, but it's helpful, but it's not necessary. And I think it is also very helpful for businesses to bring in an outside perspective, even if it's as a consultant, because if everyone has come up in the business from, say, doing it over to L&D,
Mhm,
they might not have a certain viewpoint
mhm,
that is like a different, and not necessarily better, but a different perspective that they can bring. So I
mhm.
think that's important sometimes to bring in outside people.
While I was listening to you, one like thought came to my mind. When you really know how L&D works, you become a kind of subject matter expert. But then your expertise is learning and development. And now, after listening to you, again, I see that L&D is a kind of like transversal competence or transversal area of knowledge that can be applied to actually any industry or any function. And if we look at this L&D expertise, are there which question, not with which questions, which skills do you think are really transversal and can work in anywhere if L&D demonstrate that? Because in L&D there are so many different skills, but which skills are really transversal?
There's three.
Mm-hmm.
That you need to have. I think the first thing you need to be able to do is conduct a really a very effective needs analysis,
Mm-hmm.
getting into understanding the real performance problems.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the first thing you have to do. The second thing is you have to create that stakeholder partnership, that
Mm-hmm.
collaboration, that co-creating solutions with SMEs, with subject matter experts. And I think the third thing is the measurement, the business impact, the metrics, the data, right? How can I show what we have decided to implement is
Mhm,
working, and
mhm,
not just data but behavior change, which is so hard to measure, but the business starts to feel it, not right away but over time. So I think you need to have a good plan for immediate measurement, right? The data, the metrics, whatever those are in your business. But then I also think you have to have an elongated plan of measuring behavior change.
yeah. Thank you, Jennifer. I like these very concrete answers. Three things that are key for L&D professional. And actually, you gave me also an idea for another episode about measuring a business impact after training program, because this question that I hear quite often in my organization, but also when I talk with other L&D professionals, how we can measure impact. But that's for another episode.
So
Let's focus on functional agility. Before we wrap up, what would you recommend to any L&D professional who want to grow their functional agility skill? Yeah, what would be your recommendations? And maybe you can share any resources that we can check after this podcast to leverage and build up this skill.
Well, I think podcasts like the ones that you're doing are
Mhm.
extremely helpful. I'm really into Substack now, which learning from different leaders out there. There's so many different authors. Please just Google. I'm
Mhm.
currently reading Keith Keating and Peter Brown.
Mhm.
Um, on different methodologies, different ways of making sure that we have a seat, we as an L&D have a seat at the table, and we're
Mhm.
not just as Keith Keating says, we're not just order takers, but we're trusted learning advisors, right? I'm not just taking your
Like
order,
it.
but I'm a learning advisor. I'm in the seat in the beginning. I'm finding out, is this really a training issue? I believe it's Kathy
Mhm.
Moore that has a great book called Map It. And she even helps you understand from the beginning, like, is this is this an L&D issue or is this a different kind of issue? So I think just making sure you're staying up on the up and up on our world.
Mhm.
Um, And the other thing is really immerse yourself in that particular environment that you're in. I try to get exposure to different environments. I network. I ask if I
Mhm.
can, learn more about that person
Mhm.
side of L&D, because it's really interesting to me that we all have the title of learning and development, but what we actually do at different organizations can be very different,
Yes,
very,
indeed.
very different. And so, just because we all have somewhat of a similar title doesn't mean that we all do the same thing at all. So I love to network and find out, what does L&D mean in your world
Mhm.
from the person, living it and experiencing it. So.
Oh, that's a very good tip. I love it. I love it. If I summarize what we discussed, also like three concrete, easy steps that our L&D listeners can take in order to grow further their functional agility. First of all, don't be shy to show that you are also subject matter expert and your expertise is learning and development. Then after listening you invest into learning, take time to understand how the function works, what are the roles there, what are their deliverables, what are the pain points. So like really invest time into this learning. And then lastly, collaborate with people who are around you, leverage stakeholders, but also engage subject matter experts because they can help you co-design and co-build learning solutions. You are not alone in this area supporting this new function. I hope that this takeaway helped our listeners to deepen their functional understanding and also empower them to show up as connected and trusted learning partners. And before we close, Jennifer, anything else to add to our listeners?
No, well, you know what?
Tell me.
L&D is a really important function, and you guys out in the L&D world are doing amazing work, and you're not told this enough. We're not respected enough, in my opinion, but
Mm,
we are. We're doing great work, and I think that we can make meaningful difference. And I'm just excited about where L&D is headed.
Thank you, Jennifer, for sharing your journey, also your insights, and also examples how deep understanding of L&D expertise from the whole cycle, from designing to delivery, can really drive impactful learning in the organization. And for our listeners, if this conversation helped you to reflect on the value of functional agility, or gave you ideas how to lead learning in the functional industry where you never worked before, take a moment to reflect. What will be one thing that you would do differently next time? What do you need to support such function? And share your answers in the comments under this episode. We look forward to hear from you and read your comments and then participate in the discussion offline. And with that, follow us, stay tuned on new episodes, and take part in the conversation. Thanks for watching, listening, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.